Hello Army. When Taehyung spoke, no one was ready for what came next. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just one sentence. But the atmosphere shifted instantly, and Jungkook felt it. You could see it in his eyes. The pause, the silence, the way his expression changed for just a split second. And then he tried to smile it off. But armies noticed this wasn't just another casual live. This was different. Something unspoken hung in the air. Because sometimes it's not about what was said, it's about what isn't. And in that moment, Jungkook's reaction told a story louder than any words ever could. Oh, what did Taehyung really mean? And why did Jungkook react like that? Stay with me because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The moment passed quickly. Too quickly, Jungkook adjusted his posture, let out a soft breath, and forced a small laugh as if nothing had happened. To someone watching casually, it might have looked normal. Just another live, just another interaction. But for those who have followed them for years, it felt different. The air was heavier. The silence lingered a little too long. Taehyung hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't accused anyone. He simply said what he felt, and that was enough. Because when honesty slips out unexpectedly, it doesn't explode. It settles. It sinks into the room. It forces everyone to confront something they weren't prepared to face. Jungkook blinked slowly, nodding as if agreeing, but his jaw tightened. His eyes shifted off camera for a split second. Not lost, not confused, just thinking, calculating, choosing his next move carefully. That's when the tension truly began. For years, people have speculated about the dynamic between them. The closeness, the distance, the moments of undeniable chemistry on stage, followed by long stretches of quiet separation in public appearances. Every glance analyzed, every word dissected. But they always kept control of the narrative. Until that live, Taehyung's tone wasn't angry. It was calm, almost too calm. And sometimes calmness carries more weight than shouting ever could. He spoke about growth, about change, about learning to stand alone. The kind of words that sound inspiring on the surface but carry layers underneath. Jungkook listened. Really listened. And that was the unsettling part, because instead of interrupting, instead of joking it away like he often does when things get too serious, he stayed quiet. His usual playful energy dimmed. The sparkle that fills his eyes when he's teasing Taehyung wasn't there. In its place was something far more vulnerable. Reflection. Was it guilt? Was it realization? Or was it simply the weight of years catching up in a single moment? Fans began replaying the clip over and over, slowing it down, zooming in. That micro-expression, the one where Jungkook's lips pressed together before he smiled again, became the center of endless debate. Some said it proved tension. Others said it showed maturity. A few believed it was nothing at all. But here's the truth. Reactions don't lie. You can script words. You can control statements, but you cannot fully control your face when something hits you unexpectedly. Taehyung continued speaking, unaware, or maybe fully aware of what he had just stirred. He talked about choosing his own path, about not being defined by anyone else, about stepping into a new chapter without fear. And for a brief second, Jungkook's expression softened. Not defensive, not hurt, just accepting. That's what made it brutal. Because this wasn't a fight. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a dramatic fallout. It was something far more complicated. Two people evolving in real time under millions of watching eyes. Growth can look like distance. Independence can feel like loss. And when you've built a bond that the world romanticizes, any sign of change becomes magnified. Every pause becomes suspicious. Every silence becomes a headline. But maybe the real controversy isn't what Taehyung said. Maybe it's what it forced Jungkook to confront. There was a moment near the end, subtle, almost invisible. When Jungkook finally spoke again, his voice was steady, warm, supportive. He praised Taehyung's courage. He agreed about growth. He smiled, but it was a different smile, less carefree, more intentional. The kind of smile you give when you're letting something go quietly. And that's why this live changed everything. Not because there was drama, not because there was anger, but because for the first time it felt like they weren't hiding behind playful banter or inside jokes. It felt real, raw. Unfiltered. Two artists, two individuals standing side by side, but no longer clinging to the same version of the past as, oh, what happens next? Does this mark a new era of independence between them? Or is this simply the natural evolution of a bond that has already survived more than anyone knows? One sentence point, one pause point, one expression. Sometimes that's all it takes to shift the narrative forever. And if you watch closely, really closely, you'll realize the most powerful part of that live wasn't what Taehyung said, that it was the moment Jungkook stopped pretending nothing had changed. The aftermath didn't explode overnight. It spread quietly. Clips circulated. Edits slowed down that single pause. Side-by-side comparisons appeared. Jungkook from years ago laughing freely next to Taehyung and Jungkook now. Composed, controlled, thoughtful. The contrast wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. And subtlety is what makes people look twice. But here's what most people missed after that live. Neither of them rushed to fix anything. There were no clarifications and no forced interactions and no exaggerated public moments to prove everything was fine. And that silence, it spoke louder than any statement could, because when something is truly unshakable, you don't panic to defend it. Days passed. Appearances continued. Performances remained powerful. Professionalism stayed intact. If anything, they looked stronger on stage, sharper, more focused, more independent, like two stars shining at full intensity without needing to overlap. And that's where the real shift happened. For years, the narrative surrounding them had been intertwined. Their names were often said together, their chemistry celebrated, their bond mythologized. But growth changes the shape of connection. Taehyung's words about standing alone weren't cold. They were confident, and Jungkook's reaction wasn't wounded. It was aware. There's a difference. During a later appearance, Jungkook spoke about ambition, about wanting to push himself beyond expectations, about not being afraid to redefine who he is. It wasn't directed at anyone. It wasn't offensive, but the timing felt intentional. Point two voices. Same theme, independence. And suddenly the tension people thought they saw began to look less like conflict and more like transformation. But transformation is uncomfortable. Fans don't just support artists. They build emotional timelines around them. They hold on to era's versions of people that once felt permanent. What if this isn't about distance? What if it's about alignment? There's something powerful about watching two people choose their own paths without resentment. No dramatic confrontation, no public fallout, just quiet understanding. Yet that understanding carries weight. Because when Taehyung said what he said, he wasn't closing a door. He was opening one. And Jungkook's pause, that now infamous pause, might not have been shock. It might have been recognition. The realization that the chapter they were once known for had naturally reached its final page. Not the bond, not the respect, just the version of it that the world was used to. If you rewatch the live now, knowing everything that followed, it feels different, less like a rupture, more like a turning point. There's a calmness in the way Jungkook eventually nodded. A subtle acceptance, almost pride, as if he understood that growth sometimes requires stepping out of each other's shadows, even if there was never truly a shadow to begin with. And maybe that's the part that unsettles people. There was no villain and no betrayal and no scandal, just maturity. And maturity doesn't trend as easily as drama. But here's the question no one is asking. What happens when two artists who once fueled each other's public image begin fueling their own individual legacies instead? Does the connection fade, or does it become something deeper, something quieter, something that doesn't need constant validation? We haven't seen the full picture yet. Every new performance, every interview, every unscripted moment, they all carry a new layer now. Not tension, not distance, possibility. Because sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones that survive reinvention. And if that live truly marked the end of an era, it may have also marked the beginning of something far more powerful. A dynamic built not on expectation but on choice. The next time they stand side by side, it won't be about proving anything. It will be about showing who they've become. And when that moment comes, you'll understand why that single sentence changed everything. What no one expected was how quiet everything became after that. Not distant, not cold, just measured. Every public interaction that followed felt intentional. If they laughed together, it was brief. If they stood side by side, there was space, not awkward space, but deliberate space. The kind that says, "We know who we are now." And that's when the deeper question began to surface. Was that live the beginning of separation or the beginning of balance? Because there's a difference. Balance doesn't erase connection, stabilizes it. Taehyung moved with a new kind of calm confidence. His interviews reflected clarity. He spoke about identity, artistry, long-term vision. There was no hesitation in his tone anymore. It felt like someone who had already wrestled with doubt in private and won. Jungkook, on the other hand, radiated intensity, focused, driven, sharper than ever. His performances carried a quiet fire, like he had something to prove. Not to Taehyung, not to anyone specific, but to himself. Two different energies, two different evolutions. And yet, when their paths crossed publicly again, there was no visible friction. That's what unsettled people the most, because drama is easy to read. Silence isn't at one event. Cameras caught a brief exchange between them. No dramatic hook, no exaggerated reaction, just eye contact, steady, grounded, followed by a small nod. That nod became another moment, replayed endlessly. Some called it cold, others called it mature. But what if it was something else entirely? What if it was understanding? There's a level of connection that doesn't require constant display. A level where both sides know the history, the struggles, the shared victories without needing to remind the world of it. And maybe that live forced them into that space. It stripped away the comfort of old expectations. It challenged the narrative. It demanded growth. But growth doesn't mean drifting apart. It means redefining proximity. The truth is, bonds that survive fame are rarely loud. They're built in rehearsal rooms, backstage silences, shared exhaustion, mutual respect. Those foundations don't collapse because of one sentence, but they can shift. And shifts are uncomfortable to watch in real time. What makes this chapter different is that neither of them seemed interested in performing reassurance. No forced closeness to calm speculation. No distancing to fuel headlines, just authenticity. And authenticity is unpredictable. As months continue to unfold, one thing becomes clearer. They are no longer defined by each other. Yet they are not disconnected. That's the paradox. They stand stronger individually than ever before. Their artistry feels sharper, their confidence deeper. It's as if that single moment on live gave both of them permission to evolve publicly instead of quietly negotiating it behind the scenes. But here's what keeps the tension alive. There are still moments, small ones, a shared glance during a performance, a half smile when one mentions the other in passing, an almost laugh that feels like an inside memory. Those fragments remind everyone that history doesn't disappear. It transforms. And perhaps that's what we're witnessing now. Not the unraveling of a bond, but its transition into something less visible and more intentional. The next time they speak openly about each other might not come with emotional weight. It might be simple, casual, even understated, but when it happens, it will confirm what that live truly signaled. Not an ending, a recalibration. And until that moment arrives, every appearance carries quiet suspense. Because the world is still watching for another pause, another expression, another sentence that shifts the atmosphere. And if there's one thing that Live proved, it's this. The loudest turning points don't always come with raised voices. Sometimes they come with a calm statement, a controlled reaction, and two people choosing growth over comfort. The real story isn't over. It's just unfolding more subtly than anyone expected. And when the next defining moment arrives, you'll recognize it instantly. Because once you've seen a shift like that, you never watch them the same way again. Time did what time always does. It tested the shift. Not with chaos, not with headlines, but with consistency. Weeks turned into months, and something undeniable began to take shape. Their individual projects grew bolder. Their public identities sharpened. The separation people once feared started to look less like a fracture and more like strategy. But strategy doesn't erase emotion. There were moments on stage where the distance vanished for a heartbeat.